Do you avoid making edits on stuff that's just going to get cut? My name is Gina. I'm an author, editor, publishing professional. I help you make your writing better. So this person is on the second edit of their first draft and they don't want to spend a bunch of time editing things that are going to end up being tossed later on. And I agree with you. So this is not really about like when to get feedback, but what type of feedback to implement when. And that is the reason that I created the 6 stages of self-editing. So these are a guideline, not a rule. These are a guideline if you are overwhelmed with where to start editing, or if you realize, like this commenter, like, I don't want to spend a bunch of time worrying about like, did I choose the exact right word, just to find out that that entire scene is going to get thrown out later on anyway. So in this self-editing process, we start with the big structural stuff and we sort of funnel our way down until we get to the nitty-gritty stuff. This stuff down here, this line edit stuff, this is like, am I choosing the exact right word? Are my commas in the exact right place? Did I overuse the word glance in this novel? Do I have people winking too often in this novel? Like all of the little teeny tiny nitty gritty stuff that is like going over with a fine tooth comb, and it takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of your attention. But if you end up just throwing those scenes out and having to rewrite them from scratch anyway because they were from the wrong perspective, that can be very, very frustrating. And so instead, I recommend that you start with a structural edit first. So if you've got a first draft, which means that you have thrown a bunch of sand into the sandbox so that you can build a castle later, this is where you are carving out whether or not it is going to be square shaped or round shaped. This is where you're going to make sure that you don't have tons of stuff before your inciting incident, that you have all of the general story beats are in place, that you actually have an ending, that your story resolves itself, that you have a book-shaped thing at the end of this structural edit. After that, I recommend that you do a character edit because you may have needed to delete scenes, move scenes around, different things. You might now have like emotional whiplash. So a character arc that had seemed very logical, now as pieces have been moved around, that character arc is all over the place. So you're going to make sure, do I have the right characters? Am I writing the story from the correct perspectives? Am I making this character feel consistent in the way they are behaving over the course of the story relative to the structure of that story? And then because those two are really hard and heavy, I recommend that you could then go in and do a fun one. You should now know what pieces of your world are necessary in order to tell the story. If you are doing magic, you now know what your magic needs to be able to do and what the limitations on it are because you know what the story looks like. This also, you know who your character is. So if you're not doing something with a magic system to it, you know and understand some of their personality, and you can do a better job of like choosing what kind of car they drive and what school they go to, and all of these things that help to determine character and story and plot and necessity will now make this a lot easier to choose which details you're going to focus on. After that, you are making sure that the scenes are doing more than one thing, that you are getting in late and out early, that the scenes are all in the right order, that they feel nuanced, that they are accurate at the line level. Sometimes you can condense and combine pieces of these different stages of self-editing depending on what your skill level is, depending on what genre you are writing, depending on what your feedback looks like from your beta readers and your alpha readers and all the people who give you feedback. Not everyone is going to work through this process in exactly the same way, but I do suggest this if you are struggling and you're like, I don't know where I should be spending my time right now. This is a fairly decent guideline on where to start spending your time self-editing. And if you want to see this in much more detail, I do have this available on my Patreon at the classes tier, and there is an hour-long version of this in which I go through this in a very, very detailed fashion to explain all of these different stages, how you can implement them into your work, and what that process looks like. Even if you don't want to join the classes tier in an ongoing fashion, you can buy just the bundle of classes, or you could buy just this class for $5 and be able to watch this hour-long class on your own.